Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to look into preferences. We want to understand what preferences are, how they are different from the environment, and lastly, how to use them. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. Now, in the previous video, we talked about how setting the environment allowed a child view to be able to read from the environment. So we had the example where this text was inside of a vertical stack, and setting the foreground color would also allow the child to read from the environment. However, there's also the possibility for the other way. Let's have a look at this. So if we had, instead of this VStack, a navigation view, and I would have some text in here. Now, if I would set the navigation bar title directly on the text, like so, you will notice that the navigation view is still able to read from this value passed to one of its child. In fact, even if it was a bit more complex, if you, for example, had this inside of a VStack, the navigation view would still be able to read it off. Now, how is this possible? Well, this works because of preferences. The preference system allows us to pass values from a child view all the way up to a super view that is interested in that value. So in some way, a preference is the opposite of the environment. However, the main difference is that we have to be able to define the following case. Imagine that the text has a navigation title, and then its parent child, the vertical stack, also sets it to some other title, like so. Then in this case, the navigation view ignores everything after the first navigation title that was set. However, when we define our own preferences, we have to define ourselves which one we are taking, whether we're taking the one all the way at the bottom or the one above, or what we're going to do with them. Besides that, the implementation is very similar to the environment. So let's have a look how to implement it. All right, let's start by defining our own preference key. I will create a struct and I will call this one my navigation title key. And it's going to be of type preference key. And as soon as we do that, Xcode will complain because we're not conforming to the protocol. So let's have a closer look into this, how this is implemented. And here you will see that we have to provide some associated type value. However, we can do that by simply defining this default value. So if we say the default value is of type string, it will automatically be able to tell what the value is. So all we have to implement is this static variable default value, and here is the thing that I mentioned earlier. We have to be able to tell what we are going to do if multiple children set for example, the navigation bar title. In this case, we have to provide a reduce method, and we have to be able to tell which one we are going to pick if multiple children choose their own value. So let's go back to our implementation and declare this default value. That's going to be an optional string, and initially no. Now the only thing that's missing is we have to implement this reduce function that we saw before. So Xcode will automatically give this to us, and I will just paste it in here. And the way we are going to implement it is we're going to simply say choose the first non-nil value that we get. So the way we do that is by simply saying the value is going to be equal to the value that is passed in. However, if it is nil, we take the next value. Now, to make use of this navigation title preference key, I will create a very simple custom navigation view. And the way we do that is simply defining it as follows. So the navigation view will have some generic type content. It's going to be of type view, where the content itself is also a view. Now in here we will have some content and a state property, which is going to keep track of the title. Now we have to also implement the body. And here we will simply have a VStack and the text is going to be a title. However, if it is nil, we will have an empty string there. Let's also set the font here. Make it a large title. Now here comes the interesting part. So we have this content here, and what we can do is we can say content on preference change. We will have to pass our preference key, which is our navigation title key. So I paste this in here and add the self key. Let me make some more space here. So our value will be the title, and all we are going to do is set the title to the title that we get when the preference is changed. Now let's try this out. So let's remove all of this body code in the content view, and let's use the newly defined navigation view. And the content is going to be a text, which I will set to hello world. Now what we can do here already is set the preference, and the way we do that is by simply saying preference for a specific key, and the key is going to be our navigation title key .self, and the value is going to be new navigation title, something like this. So let's see if that works. So it works. As you can see, what happened here is we set the preference to the text, and the navigation view is able to read it off on preference change and set its title here. However, it is a bit annoying to write this out, so you can also, similarly to the environment video, create an extension. So let's do that in here. It's going to be an extension on the view, and we will simply call this function my navigation title. It will take some title of type string and return some view. And in here we're simply going to call this. However, we will pass the title in here like so, and then instead of calling preference with the key, we can simply say my navigation title and say hi, and let's resume. You can see it also works just as well. Now, to just make the point clear, if you had another child, put this inside of that, it would still work. Now, one last thing before we finish this up. In this preference key, we created this reduce function, and we made a very simple implementation. However, I would also like to give you a good example for when you might use some custom implementation. Imagine you have some tab bar, and the children will all set their own value in there, and you want to basically store all of them in an array. So in that case, your default value would be an array of strings, and you could collect all of them, and then in your tab bar view you could create an for each, iterate over all of these titles, and easily create a tab bar. Alright, that is really all I wanted to show you in this tutorial. I hope it was useful. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get notified when new content arrives, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Thank you for watching.